Hey, what's up YouTube? Bronix with yet another tutorial, and in this tutorial I want to be doing skin retouching and color grading for this very image. I got so many questions and inquiries about how I retouched and color graded this image, so this is a tutorial for you guys who want to learn an in-depth color grading and skin retouching tutorial and how I was able to get sharp details out of this very image. First of all, we are in the Capture One interface and I'm using a Capture One 21, as you can see right here. So usually I put my adjustments towards the right hand side by simply coming right to window workspace, then I come to migration to have them on the right hand side. So basically I've always gone through all that in my tutorials. So first of all, in Capture One, I first come to my levels and pull my blacks in, and also come and pull my whites in like that to add some kind of contrast to the image. Then after I have done so, I simply come to these basic adjustments and come to my high dynamic range and pull in my highlights and also pull my whites in like that. Then also come and pull in my blacks a little bit, around 19. Since this image looks oversaturated, it looks overexposed, I'm just going to reduce on the exposure and increase on the contrast of this image. Then after I've done those adjustments, I'm going to come to the clarity and also knock it to around 5. Then usually, since Canon cameras always have magentas embedded in them, I simply come to the ICC profile and change it to Pro Standard, and you can see it has already dealt away with the magentas that are existing in this very image. So I think that is all I do in Capture One. So I first of all want to color grade it in Capture One, so I'm simply going to create a new field layer by just right clicking there and clicking new field layer to match or even out the skin tones and match them well. So after I've created that new field layer, I'm going to come to the color editor option right here and I'm going to click skin tone, and I get my color sample tool or color picker tool. I'm going to use Ctrl or Command plus on the keyboard, and I'm going to sample the skin area I want the rest of the image to look like basically. So I'm going to go with, I think this area looks fine for me. Yeah, it looks okay for me. And when you sample, you're going to notice that this is the sampled area. Then I'm going to come under the uniformity and I'm going to hit uniformity right here, and I'm going to move the hues until the skin tones are really balanced and blending, and I'm going to knock up my saturation a little bit. I think that is fine. So I'm going to take this image into Photoshop for skin retouching and further color grading. So I'm going to simply come to image and I'm going to come to edit with, then Photoshop 2020. Then after doing so, I'm simply going to make sure it is, I usually prefer 16-bit image. So I'm going to come to the format and I'm going to leave it in TIFF, and I'm going to go to edit variants, and the image is going to be taken right into Photoshop for further skin retouching and color grading and eye whitening. So when we are going to be doing that shortly, and it's going to be like an in-depth skin retouching tutorial in Photoshop. So you're going to be learning about each and every step I undertake while I'm doing skin retouching and color grading. So usually it is the cropping for me first. I'm going to come and choose a ratio of 4:5 or 8:10 because I post these images on Instagram. So I'm just going to slightly crop it in like that. I'm going to hit enter on the keyboard to approve those settings. I'm going to create a duplicate of the background there by hitting Ctrl or Command J on the keyboard. I'm going to get my spot healing brush tool first of all to clean up or remove the blemishes from this image, and I know this model really has a pretty nice skin. So I would like to apologize to you guys. The reason as to why I usually don't give you guys the raw files is because most of you guys tend to misuse them, and the models really complain so much about every time I give you guys the raw files. So I should respect their privacy too, and I don't want to get into trouble by giving out raw files. So it is better I don't give out the raw files, and I give you guys the tips to edit your own images the way I do. So I hope you guys are okay with that. So let me just keep on sharing the knowledge, and maybe when I get some raw files, I'll be sharing with you guys, especially when I start doing behind the scenes videos. I'm still coming up with all that. So this is skin retouching. I think we are done cleaning up the image. So after doing so, since we have already created a new layer, we're going to just duplicate that by hitting Ctrl or Command J, and we're going to name this low frequency, and we're going to name the up layer high frequency, like this. And after doing so, you're going to first of all select the low frequency layer and turn it off. So basically what I love to do, I love to select this layer, and first of all we want to blur or remove out the textures from the low frequency layer, and we only want to remain with colors. I'm basically going to come to filter, and I'm going to come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. And you don't have to cramp this radius. Make sure you look for the area that has prominent skin textures or visible textures that we want to blur out from this image. And for this case, we're going to go with the nose area. So start moving this radius until those details or textures start disappearing from the image. I think at around 8 we have lost out on the textures, and we're simply going to hit OK. I don't know why it is taking long. So the image is going to turn or look blurry. We are going to select the high frequency layer and now activate it. Then we are going to come to image, and since this is a 16-bit image, as you can see right here, we are going to use the settings for frequency separation for a 16-bit image. So come to image and come to apply image. And for a 16-bit image, first of all, you have to select the low frequency layer because we are subtracting the textures from the low frequency layer. Come to the blending mode and change it from multiply, maybe, if at all it was in multiply, and select add. And if at all it is an 8-bit image, you have to select subtract. But for this case, we are going to select add. Scale is 2, offset 0, and make sure you select invert, and it's going to put the textures right there. And when you have a 16-bit image, an 8-bit image, sorry, come and change the blending mode from whatever it is to subtract. Opacity 100, scale is 2, offset 128, and make sure you don't check or invert the layer. So this is a 16-bit image. I'm going to go with these settings. Blending add, opacity 100, scale is 2, offset 0, preview is on, and invert is not checked. And I'm going to check invert. This is a 16-bit image, so you have to check the invert option if at all it is a 16-bit image and hit OK. Then you're going to change the blending mode from normal to linear light, and you're going to put both layers into a group by hitting Ctrl or Command G after selecting them. Then you're going to name this layer frequency separation, like that. Then you're going to open the frequency separation group and select the high frequency layer. Come to the adjustments and create a black and white adjustment layer, and you're going to simply darken it like that a little bit until we see the uneven skin tones in the image. Make sure you always turn off the caps key because it's going to change whichever tool you're using into a cross-like icon, and we don't want that. So hit the caps key and you get back the tool. So right now we're going to start evening out the skin tones of this image using the mixer brush tool. So come and select the low frequency layer, and now come under the brushes, right click and select the mixer brush tool. And if at all you don't have it under the brushes, it's usually right here. Just right click and look for it. So come and make sure it is a clean brush. We have two options right here. Select the second one and make sure it is highlighted because we want Photoshop to automatically clean the brush for us after each and every stroke. Wetness is 9, load 75, mix 90, and the flow 100. Make sure sample all layers is not checked or selected. And now make sure you're on your low frequency layer, and when you're starting to blend, you can slightly zoom in, but not all the way zooming in. And increase on the size of the mixer brush tool by using the brackets on the keyboard right after the P. key on the keyboard and now start left click and now start blending the skin tones. And when you're blending, make sure you blend the midtones alone, the highlights alone and the shadows alone in an image. You see I have highlights right here. I'm just going to blend those highlights, and where they are trying to transition, I'm just going to blend that boundary. So I'm going to come to these midtones right on the cheekbone, and I'm just going to blend or harmonize them. And the way I'm moving my brush is the way light is falling on a particular area. So make sure you move the brush in that shape or direction. So you come to the nose area and just blend it like that. Shadows alone, you can see how I'm taking my brush strokes. Then we have these highlights, so come and blend the highlight alone like that. So you're going to increase on the size and just blend right here close to the lip area of the model, and just harmonize the tones that are there. So you can just increase if at all you can no longer see some areas. So and come and select back the low frequency layer and just come and basically harmonize or even out the tones in those particular areas. So we have a highlight right on the chin and you have some kind of difference in tones. Just come and harmonize them. So we want to see our progress so far for this very image. So in order to see on the progress, turn off the black and white and you can simply click to see what you have done so far using the mixer brush tool. And it is so far so good. So we just want to blend or even out the skin tones right on the chest and hands of the model. So increase on the size and simply start blending the tones like that. So I'm going to be sharing another method that you can play with alongside the mixer brush tool to even out the skin tones in your images even more and have a more natural and realistic image from your retouching processes in just Photoshop. I'm sorry if at all I'm taking this really fast, but I just felt like I should do this tutorial because so many of you guys requested me to do this, and here we are right now doing the tutorial anyway. You guys are my bosses, I should say. So let's just harmonize and blend or even out the skin tones of this model like this. So you can see I'm blending the midtones alone, the shadows alone, and the highlights alone in this image. So I'm going to come to the shoulders and I'm just going to harmonize or even out the skin tones. So we have this highlight that we are going to harmonize and even out like that. So I think this is fine and okay so far. So let me turn off the black and white to see what I've done, and for the areas I have missed out, I'm just going to come and start blending them just a little bit more. So I think we are done evening out the skin tones. You can see the before and after, before, after. So we are now going to get our lasso tool. When you are still selected on the low frequency layer, get the lasso tool. Feathering is 22 pixels and you're going to now zoom in all the way to this image. And now you're going to make a selection on the skin area like this. And you're going to only make a selection the way light is falling on a particular area. Don't select the eyebrows and maybe the edges of the model's face. So come to filter and come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. And now move this radius until you can now zoom out to see the details quite well. Move the radius until you start seeing that the texture you're getting is really natural and realistic. I think around 24 we are fine with this image. I'm going to hit, you can hit Ctrl or Command D to deselect that area, or can just make a selection on a different area and it's automatically going to deselect the previous area. So right click and click Gaussian blur. So you're basically applying the effect onto the rest of the image. Maybe where we may have not applied the mixer brush tool quite well on this image. So basically that is what I am trying to do, or what we are trying to do. I'm not alone in this tutorial anyway. So right click and apply the Gaussian blur. And you can see where I'm drawing these shapes is the way light is falling, or a particular area is really shaped. So come to the nose area and make or draw that shape. Right click and click on Gaussian blur. So we're going to come to this other side of the nose area and simply right click and come to Gaussian blur. So what I only use this method only on the face of the model, and I wouldn't love to apply it on the rest of the image, since this area usually contains less textures. I don't want to make it look plastic. I only use the mixer brush tool on the lower parts of the body, so you can see the before after. So after I've done this, I'm going to first of all select the black and white layer and hit delete on the keyboard, and I'm going to close the frequency separation group. So what I would love to do, or what I did for this image, I first of all use the dodge and burn method for using the color range, because it helps me kind of color grade this image even more. I'm going to come right here to the levels, curves. And when you come to curves, we are going to first of all name this. And let me first delete this so that we can go over all this again. So come to the curves adjustment layer, and when it is in curves, you come right to select and come to color range. So right now we just want to select the areas with highlights in this image. So for this case, we're going to select the forehead area. So make sure your quick mask option is on and your selection is also activated, and you can now move this to get a better selection of the highlights in the image. As you can see, they are now popping out. Come and hit OK. Then you can simply come and make a midpoint right in the image, and now move it up to slightly to brighten up the image. So you can see a before after. So when you're brightening up rather parts of an image, you're dodging, and when you're darkening some parts of the image, you'll be burning. So basically you're dodging and burning this image. So come back to the curves, and now you're going to come back to select, then come to color range, and this time you're going to do the opposite. We're going to come and select the shadows of the image. So for this case, we are going to go with these shadows on the nose area, and you can either play around with the fuzziness right there, and now hit OK. So you just want to darken the shadows and bring back shape or dimension to this image just slightly, and you can see the before and after for our burning, and we already have shape or dimension added this image. So we can simply name that burn and hit enter, and now select both and put them in a group by hitting Ctrl or Command G, and you can name that D and B for dodge and burn. So you can see the before and after for our dodging and burning, and the image is really starting to look or come to life. So after doing this, or what I did after doing my dodging and burning, I simply came to add a little bit of sharpening to this very image, since I felt like I had lost out some details on the face of this model. So I simply created a stamp visible layer by hitting Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, and I duplicated that by hitting Ctrl or Command J. Then I'm going to simply come to filter, then come to other, and I'm going to come to high pass. And when I came to high pass, I used a value or a radius of around 1.1, and I hit OK. Then after doing so, I came and changed it to linear light. So you can see whichever works best for you. I'm going to go with linear light for this case. So if at all I zoom in the image, you're seeing so many details, and the image has been over sharpened, and we don't want that kind of over sharpening to this image. So I only wanted to sharpen the face area or the details in the face of the model. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a layer mask by hitting on this layer mask icon. I'm going to invert or hide that effect by hitting Ctrl or Command I on the keyboard to hide it, and come right here and get my normal brush tool. And after doing so, I came right here and make sure I had black and white, and make sure white is on top because I want to reveal the effect hidden behind the black mask. So I'm simply going to paint over only the skin. Remember, I don't want to sharpen the eyes or maybe the lips. I only want to do the sharpening onto the face of the model to make the details or skin details really prominent for this model's face. So basically that is what I did. So I'm going to increase on the flow of my and the opacity of my brush and continue painting. So I'm using an opacity and flow of 100% because I can change those values later on using my opacity option in just Photoshop. So I think we are done now adding details or sharpening particular areas in this image. So you can see, if at all I zoom in, you can see the before after. So I think that is too much. I'm just going to come the opacity and I'm going to reduce on the opacity to around 49. I think that is okay. So I'm going to create another stamp visible layer. So we're going to be color grading this image and whitening the eyes in the camera raw filter. We're going to simply come and hit Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, create another stamp visible layer, and we're going to hit Ctrl or Command J to have a backup. Then we're going to come to filter and going to come to camera raw filter. So when we do come to the camera raw filter, we're going to come all the way down to the calibration option, and this is where the magic is going to take place. Most of the magic, you're going to come to the red primary and you're going to reduce it to -10, and come to the green primary and also take it to -10, and come to the saturation of the blue primary and you're going to simply knock it down to around -10 too. Then you're going to come to the hue and saturation panel and do some little bit more of the adjustments to this image. You're going to come to the luminance first of all of the oranges and you're going to knock it down to around -8. Then come to the hues of the oranges and you're going to pump it up a little bit to around 4, and come to the saturation of the oranges and you're simply going to knock it down slightly. I think you can see the before and after for this very image right now, and we have kind of muted the colors in this very image. So first of all, we're going to do the eye whitening before you can do any proceed. Before you can proceed, so zoom into the eyes, get the adjustment brush tool, and now pull down the temperature. Since we are eliminating yellowness from the eyes to around, we're going to go with around -27, the tint to around 62. Since we want the whites to pop, we are going to move the highlights to 5 and the whites to, we're going to move it to around 5, and also come the saturation and take it all the way down to eliminate the color from the white area of the eye, and simply start painting or eliminating the color from the white area and whiten the eyes basically. So you can do the same for the teeth, whitening of your images, and this is going to really transform your images. So you can see we have just whitened the eyes of this model. You can see the before and after, before after. So I'm going to hit Ctrl- to zoom out, and I'm going to simply hit OK to go back in Photoshop and use the selective color to do some more color grading onto this image. So come to the selective color option, and first of all come to the blacks and just knock it up a little bit to around 5, and come to the yellows and just take it to around -6. Then come to the reds of this image. So since we have some kind of yellows, we're going to mute the yellows a little bit in the image, and you're going to also reduce on the amount of the magentas too in the image. Then come under the yellows and reduce the amount of yellows in the image like that, and also reduce the amount of magentas in the yellows. Then what I'm going to do, or what I did, I came and I increased on the search contrast of this image like this under the contrast slider to around 5. But since I felt like I still had some warm tones in the image, I came to the photo filter option and I came to calling filter 82, and I simply knocked down or reduced on the coolness of, or the warmth of the image basically. So I moved it to around 4, and after doing so, I came, and since the image was looking bright, I came to the brightness and contrast and just knocked it down a little bit. So basically this is what I did for this very image. And after I had done so, let me put all my color grading into one group. I'm going to hit shift and I'm going to click on this layer and hit Ctrl or Command G for color grading CG. So you can see the before and after for the color grading of this very image, and the image really looks nice and beautiful. So you can see the overall before and after for what we have done for skin retouching and color grading and sharpening, plus the eye whitening. You can see the image before after. So the best way to export your images, this is where I want you guys to pay attention. Come to file and come to export as and hit export as basically. And now since we want a sharp image to be exported, we are going to now come to resampling and we're going to select by cubic sharper because we want a sharp image. So you're not going to mess around with the width and height of the image, and you can as well select the format if at all you want to, but my default is JPEG. Then if at all you want to embed the colors you have color graded in the image and you don't want the image to change color, maybe when you post it on social media or use another device to look at the image, you have to select both the convert to sRGB and embed color profile, and you'll be done. And just come and hit export. So let me wait for this load in a bit, and you're going to export the image. After it is done loading the preview of this very image, so let me just give it the time it needs, and after that just come and hit export, and you can name this tutorial maybe 2021, and you're going to now simply hit save, and the image is going to be saved in whichever location you have chosen to save the image. So basically this is how I retouched and color graded this image in Photoshop. And if at all you have learned something from this tutorial, don't forget to like this video and don't forget to subscribe if at all you're watching this video from this channel for the very first time. Ronix from Ronix Photography. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.